Alright, in today's video, we're going to be going over a post that was posted last week in the policy review thread on Smogon forums. And the policy review thread basically just goes over like rulings for competitive Pokemon, if that's the word I'm supposed to use here. It's basically just discussing aspects of the game competitively that the community can possibly change. And we got one from Soulwind here, and if you guys don't know who Soulwind is, he's basically one of the best singles players on the site. Definitely top 5, 100% in the top 10, potentially top 5. And yeah, it's called Sleep Clause, Freeze Clause, and the ulterior failure of Smogon tiering here. So what Soulwind says in this post basically is, what justifies maintaining these mods? Why should the game be deliberately changed to fit two status conditions that are completely RNG based? Is Smogon greater than the game itself that it can enforce archaic and made up mechanics at will? Why is the purity of the game not respected? Yeah, so Sleep Clause, Freeze Clause. As you guys know, this generation, Sleep was banned from usage-based tiering because it basically just came down to the fact that Sleep is kind of stupid. Always has been, to be honest. And to be fair, we're having this sort of you know, hindsight sort of thing. I forgot the word. There's a word for it, like, but I can't remember the word. My English is failing me today. But essentially, like, in my opinion, Sleep has always been one of the most annoying status conditions. But if I was to go back in time, I had a time machine, and say back in 2016 when I started playing or 2015, and I'm like, oh guys, Sleep should be banned, people would be laughing at me. They'll be laughing at me because they'll be saying, oh, we have Sleep Clause, you know, so Sleep is not broken. Well, Sleep has always been a problematic status condition, and the fact that it took us until Gen 9 to finally realize, yeah, Sleep is kind of stupid. I mean, it comes down to the fact of the newer generation of players and, you know, newer mindsets being taken into account for, you know, how to handle competitive Pokemon tiering. And it only happened because Gen 9 is an unprecedented generation for tiering, power creep, and etc. But yeah, even Soulwind makes a case here that 2 out of 9 gens have banned Sleep completely. Obviously, Gen 9 is included in that. The other one is Gen 5. And we all know why Gen 5 banned Sleep. Even regardless of the awful sleep mechanics that Gen 5 had with resetting the sleep counter when you swap out a Pokemon, like, sleep is still ridiculous. And what other communities have expressed the will to do so recently. If you think about the amount of tour games decided because one mon woke up first turn or didn't until the last turn, is quite terrifying. So yeah, like, Sleep, I've always hated Sleep, to be honest, and like, there's no other generation that Sleep is as annoying in as Generation 1. Now, I'm not going to say I'm an RBY player by any means, I'm not, but I've dabbled into the RBY lower tiers, and I'm just like, Sleep would act like, if Sleep was just banned in the RBY lower tiers, I mean, would just be a lot easier, because the RBY player base, at least for the lower tiers, when I was playing the lower tiers, these guys want to ban Confusion, but not Sleep. And I'm just like, they're arguably as stupid as one another. And I'm just like, what justifies keeping Sleep? Like, the only reason why you'd want to keep Sleep is just to maintain the status quo. But maintaining the status quo is not always something that is worth doing. It just isn't. Like, your metagame will be better. Like, I would enjoy RBY SU, for example, even if people are saying, oh, that's just a fake RBY tier. I would enjoy that format if Sleep didn't exist, because in generations prior to Generation 6, Sleep is just, like, impossible to answer for realistically. And Sleep Clause just justifies the fact that, oh, I can just sack one Monta and a Moongus Spore, for example, and then just be gone with it. Like, and I'm speaking in reference to Gen 6, obviously, but, you know, there's been other sleepers pre-Generation 6. Breloom pretty much in Gen 3 and Gen 4. Like, the only way you're ignoring its Spore is having an Insomnia Vital Spirit Pokemon. Like, come on now. Like, it's ridiculous. And to be fair, I'm happy Sleep got banned from usage-based tiering because Sleep is just stupid. But yeah, moving on to Freeze on the other hand. Freeze Clause is really only, you know, relevant for Gen 1 and Gen 2, I think. I think also Gen 3 had I don't know if Gen 3 has a Sleep Clause mod, I don't know, but people were complaining about Jirachi freezing things with Ice Punch, but I know it's 100% a thing in Gen 1 and Gen 2. So, you know, Gen 1 kind of makes sense. Like, at least the reasoning why Freeze Clause came into account was because of the fact that once you're frozen in RBY, you're frozen for life, basically. So, you didn't want multiple mons getting frozen at a time. But it's so I can't even speak English. Statistically unlikely that you're gonna have more than one mon frozen. Realistic, like, fair enough, you're having Blizzard being spammed with 90% accuracy in RBY tiers, but it's still only 10% at the end of the day. So I can see why Soulwind is just saying freeze close is stupid. Like, again, Pokemon is a game of RNG management. The tiering policy framework says so itself. Like, the game is just how it is. At this point, are we gonna police every single little thing that has RNG related? At that point, just ban paralysis, because people have complained about paralysis throughout much more generations than freeze has. And to be fair, the RBY player base, these guys are loud when it comes to getting what they want. Compared to any other player base of any other generation where they have their own player base. But yeah, moving on to what else Soulwind has to say. Both of these claws are 20 plus years old and were created by an extremely primitive group of people. The way primitive is a crazy adjective to use here, but yeah, we are stuck with rules created by grandpas in years in which 90% of the current player base didn't even exist. And I know there's going to be a certain conglomerate of people ready to defend them here, because they are sadly too afraid of change, the pinnacle of evolution. It's about time to accept Smogon tiering is obsolete, insanely inefficient, full of inept people, and in need of a whole rework. A lot of the Smogon haters are gonna rejoice at what Soulwind is saying. And to be fair, like, I know people that don't like Smogon, but like, I've been part of this community for a while. I feel indifferent to the greater like sort of thing about Smogon tiering and like the bureaucracy and the voting and all of the upper level stuff of Smogon. I'm just here to play a game. I don't really give a shit. But is things like tiering that do affect the way that I'm playing the game. So obviously I kind of have to have a bit of investment, a bit of like a care about conversations like this, for example. But yeah, in general, Soulwind wants sleep clause and freeze clause to be gone, and Smogon tiering to just be completely revamped. And to be fair, I think Gen 9, because this would have not happened in Gen 8. Gen 8 would have not engaged this conversation. And to be fair, the conversations have always been around. People don't like having mods on Pokemon Showdown like sleep clause and freeze clause. Conversations would have been around in Gen 8, but obviously they were a lot quieter. But in Gen 9, everything is louder. So obviously, we're getting posts like what Soulwind is posting here. And to be fair, it's not even like Soulwind is some random. This guy is pretty much one of the most decorated singles players on the site. So if someone of his skill level and caliber, like, people are going to listen to what Soulwind has to say, basically. But yeah, we only got 2 pages of this thread. I'm obviously not going to go over everything because I have better things to be doing. But like, a lot of people have their own perspectives. We have some of the RBY player base like here saying sleep is important to make progress in RBY, and I think is also important in GSE, especially because it makes non-sleep talk access better to handle. And I enjoy anyone being able to fish for freeze. Really makes you not want to, don't let your opponent. Am I reading this properly, or is the sentence not sentencing? I don't know. But yeah. Well, yeah, just a lot of who is any of this for? What person has ever been helped by a nebulous abstract idea of purity? And the purity conversation is important because a lot of people are just like, well, if you really want to have a 100% purity, just play the cartridge games. Like, go load up your... Well, to be fair, you can't play Gen 3 on GBA, but go load up your Gen 4 on your DS, go load up your Gen 5 on your DS, Gen 6 to Gen 7 on your 3DS, and just play online there. But as you all know, Nintendo Network got shut down, so that's not going to be possible anymore. But it's a thing where just play the actual games if you want purity, but at the same time, I don't think people understand that people that play competitive Pokemon Showdown, especially myself, I'm speaking for myself here, I couldn't give a shit about purity. I don't really care about that. But if Pokemon Showdown is a sort of simulator for the games, to the best of our abilities, let's make it as close to the games as possible. And the games don't have sleep clause and they don't have freeze clause. So I can understand people like Soulwind who are of the opinion that, yeah, these mods are pretty useless and go against like, no one's wanting purity, bro. Because if we didn't have purity, then you wouldn't be able to cancel on Showdown. You would have the actual game's timer, which is like 20 minutes overall. Like, you have 60 seconds to make a move and overall 20-minute timer, and after 20 minutes the game just ends. So obviously that's not what Soulwind is getting at, or anyone on his side, or trying to go against going against the removal of sleep and freeze clause. But it's just like, Yeah, like no one's asking for purity, bros. We're not. But yeah, minus any bombastic language involving Smogon's primitivism, this post has a pretty solid fundamental point. Tyrion probably needs to be standardized in some fashion going forward. Whether that may look like is more informed than active players to determine. However, we also need to admit that Smogon is the community of hobbyists on a civilizing mission towards a game which is unwieldy. Yeah, like you'll still see some general conversations about people saying, what do you call it? Yeah, we're aiming to, you know, standardize Tyrion. And to be fair, that's what the end of this thread here is saying about the fact that, you know, Tyrion policy framework has to be, you know, reworked basically. So yeah, we have Lily's post in here, post 43 here. Pretty clear from both the OP and responses that this is at least partially correct. Quoting what Solwind is saying here. Tyrion is slow partially by design. Look at how the sentiment OU Walking Week changed in just 2 weeks. But Tyrion leadership is also too slow to deliver verdicts, explain reasoning, and expand upon options in more complex cases. We're actively working on internal solutions to get answers to threads out faster and more comprehensively, though that in itself is an unfortunately lengthy process. So yeah, I mean, Lily here, I don't know if Lily's part of Tyrion staff. I really don't know, but this is like upper staff, so obviously you've had people looking over this that are actually in charge of Tyrion and just in charge of overall Smogon higher level shit. But yeah, it's just too broad to be productive. To be fair, that's the only con about Solwind sort of thing. Like obviously sleep clause in, you know, Gen 1 to Gen 8, freeze mod in, you know, DPP and, you know, Gen 1 and Gen 2 and whatnot. Like they're two separate issues, and obviously their own player base of the tier will have to, you know, deal with them themselves rather than have everything swept under the rug, for example, like just generally all done at the same time. Though I do believe sleep should just be banned in every generation realistically, but again, the Gen 1 player base is very loud about sleep, so can't really say anything there. But yeah, addressing some of the arguments given in this thread, and I think yeah, this rounds up some of the stuff that I haven't gone over here. But HP percent has been covered already, but that is not a mod in current generation formats. It was a limitation on the devices Pokemon used to be played on. You can play without HP mod in old gens right now if you want to. Timer mod is still standing in current generations as our only remaining mod that affects battle. Removing and using the 20-minute true time in the game use would be doable, but would be a massive change. And to our knowledge, no one is considering that. Yeah, and I don't think we should. I'm telling you now, even the purists that, like, people that actually do want to strive for purity on the simulator that we play, no one wants timer, bro. Why would you want a 20-minute timer? Stall is basically dead. And like, stall basically just wins on preview without any shot, because you can actually stall out a game for 20 minutes. I've been in games that aren't even that stally for over an hour. Like, you know, we're not changing the fucking timer. But yeah, to sum up this post, fully agree that the Tyrion admin needs to be more responsive. We'll be delivering our updated Tyrion framework soon. We're open to individual proposals to remove mods from old gen tiers. They just need to be targeted, specific, and have player-based support. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what people want to do, but let this be a wake-up call to any of the top players in their respective generations. Obviously, I have my, you know, stock in Oras, for example. Again, like, Oras sleep isn't that crazy. It really isn't. Like, you have some Sporers here or there, like Breloom, Amoonguss, and somewhat. Again, not the most, like, Breloom's not the most common one in Oras these days, but Amoonguss, Spore, fair enough. But at least in Gen 6, you have counterplay to sleep. Powder moves, which are the most common sleeping options in Gen 6, grass types are fully immune to. You have Overcoat to ignore them as well. Like, Mandibuzz might not be an OU level Pokemon, but it is UU and a relevant, you know, Pokemon still, like, if you wanted to use it. But before Generation 6, your way of sleeping is just, your sleep prevention is literally just not getting slept or having insomnia and vital spirit Pokemon. So, you know, take that as you will. But yeah, Lily's saying previous generations are going to be considered. Like, just do it then. If you want to get sleep banned in Gen 6, Gen 5, Gen 4 and so on, just do it. But, you know, just make sure that, you know, you have some back into it, maybe have some clout, getting your circle jerks, you know, about, you know, making sure sleep gets banned in these generations if you really want that to be happening. But yeah, overall, yeah, I would be open to seeing some Tyrion policy framework rework for sure. And yeah, that's all I really have to say about this video. Let me know down below, guys, if you believe sleep and freeze claws are, you know, antiquated sort of mechanics that should not be on competitive Pokemon anymore. If you do want to keep sleep, let me know why. To be honest, sleep is still stupid. I don't know why you'd want to keep it. But yeah, thanks for watching, you guys. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.